Okay, cool. I think we're good. So, this song, Take All the Time You Need, just came out today. And I feel like it could be a good springboard into our convo afterwards. Because we were just talking about patience. And this song I wrote to myself to really remind myself to be patient. And especially during these times. So take all the time you need. Take all the time you need. Welcome your enemies. So take all the time you need. You're buried underneath all the rivers, rocks, and trees. I'm water when you need sunshine, sunshine. Hey, you're steel, ooh, ooh, ooh. 'Cause nothing real is touched. You are enough today. You are enough. So take all the time you need to color and believe. Da 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 da. And I'm drifting off to sleep. Some Uber shifts this week. I'm here and listening from moons away. Hey, you're still, ooh, ooh, ooh. 'Cause nothing real is touched. You are enough today. You are enough. Without the sun's exposure, my insides turn to steel. But out the door is sunlight, sunlight, oh so real. But out the door is sunlight, oh sunlight, ooh, it's real. So take all the time you need. Take all the time you need. That's the new one. Oh wait, I can't hear you yet.
Oh shoot. Yeah, I was saying I was there, man. I was outside in the sunlight with a friend close to me and just like feeling the energy and the vibes. Yeah, man. I feel like that song and message has longevity, man, because it's genuine. So I was feeling it. I was feeling it. And I'm happy I was feeling it because sometimes, like, if you're on a Zoom call, I could have been thinking about other stuff, but I actually am grateful. I zoomed in into the song. So that was nice.
If I worked for Zoom, that would be the snippet you would take and use as a 20-second advertisement. I zoomed in on the call.
I zoomed in on it, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited to share that one. It's a collab. My friends Connor, Drew, and Tommy on guitar, bass, and drums are on it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love the message in it. It's a reminder to myself, like a lot of the things I create, if they're coming from that genuine place, they tend to be reminders for my forgetful self who might fall into old ways. That one has reminded me a lot in the last several months to be patient.
True purpose of music.
So yeah, like in some of the words in there, take all the time you need to welcome your enemies. And when I was writing it, it was at a time where I had a lot of forgiving to do of one person in particular that I was just holding a lot of judgment and grudge towards, maybe more judgment and resentment, sort of the word. And it's really the opposite. Instead of pushing away, it's actually welcoming in to allow yourself to feel all that and heal all of that. And there's another part in there in the chorus that I sort of paraphrase from the Course in Miracles, which I heard from Eckhart Tolle, saying nothing real can be threatened. In terms of, to me, I sort of interpret that as like our soul, like the things that are eternal, our awareness can't be touched or threatened. Like even though if my hand gets chopped off, I'm still me. It's still me operating this body. And the end of the course saying you are enough, just the sort of the human hug there of like, let me put it simple for you. If you forgot, here's a reminder. You are enough.
I could feel the love in it, man. I could feel the love in it. Yeah. It actually, yeah. I could just see myself like listening to that, man. Some headphones on, doing dishes or, you know, working around the house and getting into the zone. It actually reminds me a little bit of Tame Impala's song, what is that one again?
I know we're talking about the same one.
And then there's one verse that I love in there, but I don't want to say that verse, but I just do love it because it's so detached, but it's kind of like could be misinterpreted. But it's like maybe I'm something. How do I do this is love? What the heck was
that album is just so good.
Yeah. Thinking of this song, and like probably if anyone's listening to this, they're like, "Come on, you guys can do it." You can remember the name of the song.
Someone knows.
Yeah.
If this ever reaches the light of the day, comment below what the song is.
Yes. There we go. There we go.
Boom. We're working together now.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
So, what's your day looking like?
Well, this, and then I actually was planning to take the notebook and sit down and reflect prayerfully, and kind of structure the rest of the day. So that's actually written down in my bujo. This is what my bujo looks like, my bullet journal. And then, you know, got my little section in there about like, you know, reflecting a little about, you know, how yesterday went, you know, and what promises made, and then what today looks like. So that's in the design is after this to kind of just sit, reflect, and I have that luxury now, which I love because of the quarantine, because we still have quarantine here, is to be able to like have an open canvas for your day.
A blessing or a curse, depending on how you look at it.
Exactly.
There's I'm gonna have to grab the actual phrasing here, but there's a book by Yuval Harari called *Sapiens*, which is right here. I want to read.
Yes, please.
What you had said reminded me of this all of a sudden. It's the very last sentence of the book. He's talking about a brief history of humankind, and he goes into AI, and it gets pretty deep into like the mutation of DNA and just how far along science is. and he ends the book talking about, is there anything more dangerous than dissatisfied and irresponsible gods who don't know what they want? And I was like,
Could
what
you
do
just
we
say that one more time?
yeah, it says, is there anything more dangerous than dissatisfied and irresponsible gods who don't know what they want?
Oh.
So to give it a brief thing of context, with all the science and the evolution going on, we're obviously as humans becoming much more capable of manipulating energy. But the question is like, what is the intention of going to the moon and to Mars? Like, what do we actually want?
Exactly. So true. So true.
Survival's maybe a basic answer, but beyond that, as something I remember you telling me in a previous convo, like once we get to that place where we can all survive and work together and cooperate, then like what do we want then? Once everyone has food, like now what? And we're not quite to that place yet.
Right.
But we're heading there, and
Yeah. It's the direction we're moving in. You know, we've got some I guess like a theater of centuries ahead of us, like a drama of centuries ahead of us, but we will get there. Yeah.
bro, that's write that one down. I love how a drama. Yeah, we have some drama to work through. That's for sure. And unity is still such a big word that you've helped plant the seed in my mind. I've just been thinking about it so much since we last talked.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up in that one song, The Journey Back to Unity. It's so fascinating to witness this happening right now with all of the uprising of racial injustice being really exposed, and all the work and shadow work that needs to be done on the individual level and the collective level. Which, man, I've just so appreciated all the things you've been sharing with me on and off camera, just being aware of not forgetting all those simple principles.
Well, man, I just want to highlight, I moved to interruption. That's how much what you're saying hit me, because I think I would like to really highlight your spirit of care and kindness and unassumingness and openness and encouraging collaborationness that I've seen you display on social media and also just in our conversations. Because I think, and actually in the quote I wanted to share, one of them I was thinking about possibly sharing today, it talks about we can't really make progress without a unity of conscience. You know, as many things we want to work on, from racial prejudice to women's inequality between men and women, and work towards equality between men and women, to working for universal peace, which we don't have in the world yet, on an individual, community, national, or global level, in any country, really. And these things are so important, but the foundation for it is we actually have to remove hatred. Even though if you say, oh, we got to get rid of hatred, everyone would be like, oh yeah, get rid of hatred. Even my tone there is still part of this culture of criticizing people. I wish I could say it in a way that wasn't criticizing people who feel hatred, because we all do feel different things that aren't the best, or they don't say that they're not the best, but they make it difficult to construct something. You know, like you can build a sandcastle right at the area where the high tide's going to come up, You know, you can do it. It's not bad, but it's just much more difficult to make one that's going to stay standing. And in the same way, hatred is darkness, no matter where, Abdul Baha says, no matter where it rears its head, it will always be a dark force. It doesn't matter if it happens in the heart of a person who for 1,000 years was loving. That moment where it happens, it's a dark force, and it's not conducive to learning and growth. And for the progress that we all need so bad right now, we need learning and growth. And so I just wanted to highlight that vibe that you bring to the table, because I feel like it is so important for sustainable progress. It doesn't happen through force, it happens through love, which is a force, but it's not that kind of force. Yeah. Love and education, and you can't really have effective education without love, and effective unity without love. And you can't even really, I don't think, my uncle was telling me, but I haven't seen the quote, but he was telling me that actually love is the begetter of all things, but justice in the sight of our Creator is the most beloved thing in His sight. But love is the begetter. Like, love is what causes it, what creates it. So I think you can't even really have, I'd have to think more about this, but it's amazing the way the different qualities of a human being and of the qualities of the divine, you know, like justice, love, peace, how they interact, you know. And you couldn't have a justice that's good if you're like, okay, here's justice for the world, we're just going to take love out. I wouldn't want to be there, you know. Or if you just like, here's love in the world, but you take justice out completely, I wouldn't want to be there either. But the thing is, you can't have one without the other. It's like you can't have a chocolate chip cookie and be like, we're just taking the chocolate chips out, here's a chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah. The universe is like a chocolate chip cookie, except you can't change it. It is what it is. It's a chocolate chip cookie.
There it is, bro. Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better, man.
You mentioned education a second ago, and it just circled back in my brain. I remember hearing from Ralph Smart on YouTube. I think one of the translations of the word education or educate means to bring out. I'm not sure if that's totally accurate.
Amazing.
Just hearing that, even if it's not true, just hearing that felt true to me. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Like, a lot of the times when I think of teachers to student, oftentimes the stereotype might be like the teacher sort of putting things in to the person's head, or giving them putting in, versus that approach of more so extracting, bringing to the surface, like, oh, what are you interested in? What are you curious about right now? And I love and appreciate how in some of our previous combos, you mentioned the importance of, when talking about things like this kind of dialogue of like us learning it together, being aware of not putting things in, but like asking like, hey, is this something you even want to talk about right now? Like, it might not even be the right time to learn. There's so much learning and teaching is a tricky, messy process. It can be. It doesn't have to be. We can listen more.
It depends on the situation, you know.
And my intention for today is to honor silence and creativity. And the feeling I'm bringing behind that is I wanted to keep reminding myself, like, what if a camera crew was following you around right now? How would you be acting? Like, what would I be saying? What would I be talking about? And even doing this, having conversations, like, I'm already starting to like sweat a little bit, because like I'm raising my energy. I'm literally getting warmer. Something like that.
Love it.
I remember one of our earlier convos, talking about silence, and I'm starting to see that as a trend, as one of my primary intentions when talking to people. Um, it's so easy for me to fill space, and I'm trying to make a very conscious effort to really be a silent listener and even like a silent speaker, from like this inner body awareness of not filling the space, just sort of riding the wave in a very calm way. And it's so subtle too. It's so subtle. It's like not letting the brain just hop in and throw in an extra thing that's not needed. Just when it gets to the end point, period.
I just wanted to let that moment sit there because I feel like words can sometimes have more meaning with that like extended moment of silence.
Have you ever listened to Eckhart Tolle speak?
I probably should more. I have, but you keep mentioning him and I'm like, oh, maybe I could take take some juice from him.
When I sort of went through my heightened spiritual awakening chapter 2-ish years ago, Eckhart Tolle was sort of a catalyst that helped to really guide me through that process. Like he just happened to be at the right place at the right time where I was receiving what he was teaching. So he's been like a very helpful teacher that I've referred back to. And the first time I heard him speak on YouTube, I was blown away by, and I didn't understand it really. I was like, this is kind of strange. He would not talk for 20 seconds. And you could see him being aware of his thoughts and just like letting them all pass till it got quiet. And then he would talk and be in this unknown of speaking from silence rather than just like regurgitating whatever his brain was saying.
Mm-hmm. Once I was reading, I didn't finish it, but I was reading Creating a New Earth, I think. But he was highlighting his experience that led to his awakening. And how he would connect with silence and would find like enlightenment in a way from silence, sort of. But something you said reminded me of that. I can't remember what it was, but it was yeah, I can't remember what it was, but something reminded me of that, and I thought that I'd like to check out some more of his stuff. You know, Creating a New Earth and The Power of Now. I've kind of like just dabbled a little bit, but I haven't really. But I keep coming across people who have really benefited from some of the insights.
One of the chapters talking about silence really clicked a light bulb in my head when I was reading it. And it's all things we already know, we innately know. But the way he described it, I guess it landed where he would talk about all sounds come from silence. And without silence, we wouldn't. It's like the baseline of where sounds emerge from silence. So if we really pay attention to our surroundings, one thing I love to do in terms of getting present to my surroundings, the here and now, I listen to my surroundings, the room I'm in, or if I'm outside, sitting outside, I can close my eyes and I listen as if it's a song that's playing, like as if I have a song playing from my iPod or iPhone, iPod, throwback. And it's amazing how much little things we can pick up on all emerging from silence. Like they just kind of pop up like, doop, it was 0 and now it's like level 2. And then it's 0 and this bird became like 5 out of 10 over there. And then it's back to 0. And then it's like this.
Oh, that's interesting.
These cars made a sound, went up to 7 volume and then back to 0. And like you can listen to the 0 volume, that there's nothing there, and then something emerges out of it. Whoa, and then it goes back down. So that's sort of like a visual way I've been experiencing sound.
Yeah, it's making me like think I'm more aware of the birds here right now, and like thinking to myself like, oh, that's applicable. I can experiment with that.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be a way to connect more. When I had a sort of wake-up call in high school, like silence was a huge assistance for me to get through high school. That's really personal. I'm like, dang, I haven't really talked much about that, but yeah, I like, sometimes you could just connect. It would be like, wow, that tree leaf over there, how silent is it right now? You know, and peaceful. You know, there could be like chaos going on, but like in that leaf and within that leaf, there's just like a perfect process of photosynthesis happening, and it's just sharing its color in its all natural way, and it's part of a whole, and it's completely peaceful.
That reminded me somehow to playing sports in high school. You mentioned high school, maybe that's how. And I played a lot of baseball in high school, and
oh, cool.
I love baseball. Loved it. And I guess with performance and sports in general, you can get a lot of nerves and excitement, and you're harnessing a lot of energy to maintain your composure. And I don't know where I would have gotten this from. I'm sure from somewhere, but oftentimes when I would get like really nervous as I was about to go hit or something, to go up next, I would put things into perspective. I'd like zoom out into space and be like, why am I nervous? Like, this is such a small little thing. Like, this is so small. And then also I would imagine things like, in 4 hours, all these people that I see are going to be underneath covers sleeping somewhere in a bed. Like, it's just a game we're playing right now, and we're all going to be asleep in like 3 hours. So like, what does it matter if I strike out or hit a home run, or like, we're all just going to be asleep in our beds in a couple of hours.
It's brilliant. It's perspective. And I think with the current challenges that the world's facing, those that are at the moment especially trending, and those that are at the moment, just like the silence and the loudness, you know, that are, some of them are being heard right now, but others are there kind of in the shadows and they're not being heard as much. But they're all part of one thing, which is a human race that is a little bit sick right now, you know, and in need of healing. And the healing power of unity is something that we've been thinking about, and the need for unity is really like maybe the single, could be looked at as the single most pressing malady, is the disunity in the world. And then the question is like, all right, so how do we have unity? How can we, and I think that's this principle that Abdu'l-Baha spoke of in a tablet that he wrote. He's an important figure in the Baha'i faith, for anyone's like, who's Abdu'l-Baha? And he wrote a tablet to these people working for peace. It's called the Tablet of the Hague, or Tablet to the Hague. He wrote 2 of them, but one of them in 1919. It's interesting. It's almost like exactly 100 years ago. One in 1920, so it would have been 100 years ago this July, I think July 18th. But he wrote it talking to them about peace, and he said, you know, it's so wonderful that you want to work for peace. You should get 1,000 praises for this intention. And then he highlights the word this intention. And it's just so insanely loving, you know, and he just embraces them with his words. And then, see if I can pull it up here. I thought it was really interesting. So then after he really highlights, you know, they had recently just had the Spanish plague and the World War One. And he talks about how war is just destruction, while universal peace is construction. And that's what we were talking about, is like, once we have that harmony and that unity in the world, we can really reach the potential that the arts have. We can really have a renaissance. We can really have uninhibited friendship, you know, and collectivity and freedom at the same time as healthy boundaries. And so he kind of highlights that and talks about how war is darkness, in his own words, war is darkness upon darkness, while peace is heavenly light. And right now there's enough war happening at the individual level, the community level, the national and world level, unfortunately. And it's like we said, the struggle for existence. He calls war as the struggle for existence, while peace is mutual aid and cooperation among the peoples of the world, and the cause of the good pleasure of the true one in the heavenly realm. So it's like that divine power, source of our life and creation and whatnot. It basically is pleasing to the divine, you know, when there's that cooperation, mutual aid and assistance. So when we talk about the recent events, we need that same spirit to solve it. And I've seen in my social media a whole lot of, and I understand it, and it's like, if we want long-term transformation, it has to be built upon love and harmony and mutual understanding and patience, like you talked about earlier, forgiveness. And some of that does require like taking a pause, taking as much time as you need to maybe to heal, to be open. Because in the end, we're all human beings. So we can't just force someone to not be a human. You know, if a human being needs time, then a human being needs time. You know, like, we have to work. So I think it's this collective thing of these spiritual qualities like justice and love. We work towards them intensely. So if there's an urgent need to work for justice, yes, we can work for justice intensely. We can also employ the qualities of love and kindness at the same time while we work for justice. You know, while we work for unity and understanding, because certainly if we understand something, there's many things we ourselves don't understand. And I think love and kindness help us to be careful not to move into the terrible realm of self-righteousness, because that place is divisive. Nobody likes self-righteousness vibes, because it's a party pooper, essentially. You know.
I remember you saying, oh, is there more you wanted to say there?
Sorry?
Is there another thought there?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, there's a couple things, but I want to hear, because this might be a natural point to like.
What it reminded me of right there at the end is something you actually said in a previous convo about turning to something greater than yourself to help sort of recorrect that imbalance. And it's like, yeah, like I am just a small little puzzle piece that is operating in harmony orchestrally with the rest of the universe. Like I'm a little fly in the big grand scheme of things. I could just get stomped on any second by a meteor. So it's not like I have some magic superpower of being more powerful or more righteous or more anything than anyone else or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we talked about for a split second before about insects, and that's been growing on me too. Last night I performed a show, and it was out by this
Cool.
water up here, beautiful like sunset backdrop. It was very
So
beautiful.
nice.
And off to the side there's a table, and it's designed for fish, like big fish that come off a fishing boat or something, to go up there and just get like chopped up. And I just remember during the show, like looking over and seeing that. And for the first time, like I haven't felt that way towards a fish before, but I was just like, whoa, like that's literally like a table used to like chop up other animals. And that feels uncomfortable. And like, I hadn't felt that way towards fish before, which is funny. I'm unlearning this hierarchy of, I mean, I'm eating vegan now and for a few years vegetarian. I don't know. It's my hierarchy of what's important is really starting to dissolve as far as animals go. It's like, how can you pick and choose? Like in some countries, people eat dogs, and in some countries, they're man's best friend. It's like, of course, there's a variety in human nature. I think of just how it panned out. But for me personally, in my own experience, I'm sort of seeing this dissolving happen of, I don't think any one species, we're all a living being together. So it's like, oh man, you're cutting me open. Like that's, do I need to do that? Is it necessary? Maybe it's a question I'd want to ask. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful and powerful. Like that's it seems like part of the awakening that happens within us as we like work towards more and more um, being more and more in tune with reality and like more and more connected and more loving and more caring and more illumined. And then I think as that happens, we become more and more fruitful and more happy and peaceful. And as that happens, our empathy and compassion increases. Like when you're full, that's when you can really care more about. But if you're just trying to not fall off a cliff, it's hard to be like, oh, I feel so bad for this person back in my neighborhood who's suffering. You're just like, I hope I don't fall right now. And or if you fell and you're injured, you're like, man, I hope I get better. Metaphorically, so I think that it's like a sign that one is like becoming more productive, more fruitful, more happy, and their mind is opening and they're more connected with the divine, and they are then going to more connect with the other creatures. Because I think that's a whole topic, a deep topic. I think of what is human beings' responsibility towards the animal kingdom. Because there's different kingdoms. There's the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and humanity. And each of the different kingdoms contains the other, but is also dependent on it. So you literally could never have a single plant that doesn't have minerals. It's dependent upon the mineral kingdom in so many ways. Even like fusion and the sun and stuff, I don't know enough about that really. I guess I know enough, but I'm sure that it has to do with like elements. And to me, it's like maybe that's even another kingdom, I don't know, but like the elemental, probably just the mineral. It's the elements of that and like a fusion process, which then all the animals depend on. And it's like if you remove the mineral, you couldn't have a human being. So even though there's higher levels of mutual aid and cooperation within a plant than there is in a mineral, because a mineral generally is just sitting there, but a plant is incorporating minerals, it's working them around in a certain situation, and it has the power of growth, you know, and all these complex processes happen. But then in an animal, they even happen on a more intense level. It has so much more going on. In addition to having the power of growth, an animal has the power of thought too, you know. So, but all of that thought is based on instinct and survival, you know. But it still expresses, each of these kingdoms express the qualities of God. So like a bear might, in a way, or a bear that's like, I don't know, knocking over something heavy, I don't know, like it's expressing God's, the power, like the quality of power. And that's like spirit, you know, power. You know, so it expresses in a way, every created thing expresses in different ways attributes that in the end go back to the same source that we came from, reflect that same source. I think the human being has this capacity, which I think is like a whole nother topic and a beautiful topic to explore, like to think about. But we have the power of reflection. Like a mineral doesn't have the power to reflect and be like, let me think deeply about an art that expresses a concept that could potentially guide a nation. That's like how crazy powerful like things a human being does are. And an animal might come up with a way better idea of how to get water, for example, perhaps, because maybe over years and years of adaptation and understanding and change and DNA transferred from one generation to the next, like it can sense water from like maybe even miles away. But then the human being's task is to be humble and say, okay, to apply qualities of God, because a human being, Baha'u'llah says, can reflect all the infinite attributes of God. Every single attribute that God has, a human being has the potential to reflect that. Whereas every other created thing, it has its own quality that it reflects, you know. And I think, as I understand it, that human beings have a huge responsibility towards the animal kingdom, you know, to like care for and protect it. And there's different reasons, but one of them is they can't speak for themselves.
Yeah. We've done some things. We've been bullies. Yeah, that's tough.
And then there's even,
swallow. But that's where we're at, and we can keep talking about it for sure.
yeah, no, it's deep. I mean, we have a big responsibility towards the animal kingdom. And then, and it is somewhat contrary to the laws of compassion, you know. And in the future, everyone will be vegetarian in the future. But the I think the another higher level of unity is in when one's heart becomes illumined by the divine glory of God, and it becomes so illumined, then it's even operating at a higher level than just the regular human level. Where the human level, we come up with universities, we create a math textbook, we learn how to do plumbing and make microchips. That's a pretty high level. We draw into, you could say, like the universal mind and pull out ideas that are invisible and we make them visible. But when we even reach to the highest level, which is like the illumination from the glory of God, then it's a new level of unity. It's like a unity of spirits, it's a unity of love that's expressed at a higher level. And from that, the type of progress is so much more guided, because at the human level, I could make a weapon of destruction, or I could also make a weapon for productivity. But at that divine level, only good things Like if the glory of the creator and the divine teachings, which you find in all the different religions, and they just came at different times based on the needs and the maturity level of the human race. If you take that divine guidance and that illumination, not just in words, because everybody always does stuff in words and you get these terrible results, but like in spirit, like really the essence of it, like the essence of these major religions and teachings, um, then and by the way, like even ancient Greece, people are like, well, how would ancient Greece come about? You know, they didn't have like a divine teacher. They did. It was a group of people that were inspired by Moses that lived in a different area that inspired the sages and wise men that then enabled Greece to create its amazing civilization. So everything of like true progress has originated from these prophets and these messengers and these teachers who have come from one source and have really had one voice, but they just like is different. But I think at that highest level, yeah, only good comes from when the more and more we become illumined with that like divine light that helps us to reach better and better levels of unity. Then that from the place of the soul, you're directing development of technology and not just from like the human plane, which is a more I like what you said. It's like it may be a higher kingdom, but it's not like you look with arrogance at the lower kingdoms, because we are entirely dependent to exist. The human race exists because of each of these kingdoms, you know. So if I have a chance to save a radish plant or a 3-year-old child, I'm going to save the 3-year-old child, you know. If I have a chance to save someone's pet dog or a 3-year-old child, the 3-year-old child. But that's where it stops. Like if I have a chance to save, God forbid, I don't even want to think about it, but like a 3-year-old child or another 3-year-old child, I would try to save both of them. We must try. Like you can't, after the level of a human being, like we can't do any more of that type of stuff. It's crazy, you know. But yeah. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling on, and I kind of also am feeling like, you know, this is probably a long talk, so I'm speaking really freely and like not thinking about like how it might be shown or anything like that.
Oh, dude, you're good. With that note, I'm gonna run use the bathroom real quick.
Yes.
I'll be right back.
Yes. I'm gonna fill up some water.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. 1 sec. The switch in my mindset for money that really sort of clears things up is when you have a strong, positive, inclusive intention that has beauty and truth behind it. Having more money is helpful because you can be more helpful, and that just sort of like flattened my house of cards, because I was like, you know, oh, I don't want to charge for playing music because I would do it for free. Like I'll take $20, 40. Oh, you have to pay me less. That's okay. Like I'm just happy to do it. But it's like there is that balance that I'm learning about with disciplining my boundaries of knowing what I'm worth, which is hard to put a number to things like these. But yeah, I guess just my relationship with money is evolving because I see right now in this society, which random side note, I went down the rabbit hole the other night on Bitcoin and fiat currency and just how the flow of all that's gone down. I'm like, whoa.
Wait, what was the other one? Bitcoin and what?
Fiat currency.
Oh.
Fiat. I think to my understanding, it's like money that's not backed by gold or not backed by something. So it's literally like just a cultural agreement that the government says, hey, this $20 bill in the US, there's nothing, we literally just printed it. It literally is a piece of paper, of course, but you can trust that in this environment, it has value. So it's not actually like backed by anything, where the idea of the $20 bill used to be you could literally go to the bank and take out $20 worth of physical gold. So there's an actual like tangible amount of what's
Yeah.
quantifying the value. But
I'd like
now,
to turn in my 20 for the gold chunk.
right. And now that's no longer a thing, really. It's just like arbitrary of we're printing paper, and it works. Like, people trust when I hand them a $20 bill that they can use it again in the future. They
Right.
trust there, culturally trust.
Right.
But anyways, how that relates to mindset, um, in terms of service, I think when I've now stepped more into the service mindset, I'm trying to ground myself in that, which seems to be more my natural state. First of all, it's been a lot of
Love it.
unlearning. But second of
Love
all,
it, man.
money is really helpful to be helpful. It's sort of
Mhm.
it's a tool we're using in this current society. Just that's how it is. So, like, if someone came up and said, "Hey, I want to take all your lunch money," I don't know if saying like, "Oh, take it," like, that's fine, that's fine. Like, I think if someone's in need and you're okay, like, of course, there's everything circumstantial to a point, but there is some power which I'm learning about, of how to honor the fact that if I really do intend to be helpful, that resources are helpful. Like, because the bad guys out there, quote unquote, maybe people that have forgotten some of their true nature, they're not slowing down if they're just doing their thing. So
Exactly.
I have to do my thing and put myself in the best position to be helpful. And that in order to be helpful, I have to work on my relationship with money. So
Mhm.
in order to be in service, I literally have to unlearn negative money beliefs. That's part of the path of service. Right now,
Yeah.
maybe it's like a precursor.
It's really important. You have me looking up something specifically about means. Um,
Mm.
yeah, because it's such an important point. Um, I think and I was just I want to write down a note, if you don't mind, about this
Yes.
topic.
Mm-hmm.
So like having that we could like have a whole. I would love to one day have like a podcast or something together on this topic about the importance. And so it's like the idea of coherence between the spiritual and the material. And I'm quoting from a website that's talking about this concept. But I was looking for a passage. I'll find it another time. But it basically says like once you reach a degree of spiritual maturity, that's when means are necessary, material means and money and fun.
Wait, say that one more time.
I think it's something like when you reach spiritual maturity, means are necessary.
So how do you interpret that?
So yeah, so I wish I could have found the exact quote, but the way I interpret it is once you become like a more mature, illumined, positive person, you really need material means because your use of them is going to benefit your world and
Mm.
society. But if you're like a selfish, self-centered, hateful, and nobody is that, but if at the moment you're exhibiting characteristics and you're allowing the animal side, the good animal side, but when it's not controlled by the higher spiritual side, the animal side is destructive in a human being. It's perfect in an animal because it's just survival, you know. But in the human world, we can't do just the animal thing, you know, because it's harmful. Like if I were to just be like, um, yeah, I mean, it's easy to come up with examples, but like, you know, hey, you're threatening my yard. I'm gonna just destroy the threat once and for all. You know, like it doesn't work in the human world. But in a wolf pack, it works great.
Mm.
um, but yeah, but what you were saying, it's like the spiritual. When the spiritual when your actions are guided by a love for every human being and by a care and understanding and a desire to cause more harmony and progress in the world, then you really need material means because your use of them now is going to be directed by those spiritual understandings and forces. Whereas if it's self-centered and only caring about ourselves, then we use the means to, for example, secure a plot of land. Like, okay, I finally got my 800K. I built my t-shirt factory over here, and now I'm literally, you know, it used to cost me 50% to make a t-shirt. Now I can make a t-shirt for 3%. You know, what a great investment. Nothing wrong with that yet, but it's like, let me buy that extra piece of land so that I don't have to pay all that money to get rid of the waste from the machine process. I can just dump it there. And it's illegal. I have my lawyers, so it's illegal for anyone to go on that property or to really investigate it. They're jammed. Their hands are tied. I can do it. So it's like the same material means. It would have been better if I didn't have them. You know, and actually where my uncle lives, a very sad story is like for 10 years, people were dying because the company was actually throwing waste. And this is in a wealthy community, if you can imagine. But a company down the road was putting waste. And so for 10 years, the people were dying and complaining. Finally, I saw it in the news one day. I don't know what ended up happening. Hopefully they got like a big lawsuit or something.
Powerful
Heavy.
question, maybe. Do you think any humans are truly evil?
No, absolutely not. Not a single one anywhere whatsoever. Impossible. Impossible. Not even Hitler.
Dude,
He's
keep
just
going.
veiled.
Yeah.
No, his light is just veiled.
Uh-huh.
You know, so there can be people where their heart becomes like a stone and they're veiled, but they're not evil. They're a beautiful, wonderful creation. If they were evil, then you could just find the baby and get rid of the baby. Like then we just would develop the technology to identify the evil ones, but there's no evil ones. There's just human beings. And when they turn towards these heavenly teachings, they become more and more bright and beautiful. And when they turn towards the earth below and model themselves based off of the hypothalamus. What is the in the brain that's the lizard brain, the animal instincts?
I'm not sure I know, but like I'm following you totally.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure it's called, but I think it's called like the hypothalamus, I think, but it's like the part of the brain that that the animal, that's what the animal has, right? And that's what directs the animal's movement. When we turn towards the world, there's nothing wrong with worldly pleasures. There's nothing wrong with these things. But when our desire for them becomes greater than our love for the human race and for the world, then we start becoming feverishly attached to these things. And if that happens enough, it clouds who we truly are. And when that happens enough, we can just become an absolute beast and worse than an animal. Because an animal that attacks a person is just doing the right thing. It's not wrong at all. If I'm biking and a mountain lion gets me, if anyone is in error, it's me. It's not the mountain lion. Because that's its natural habitat. I'm a prey. It's doing what it's supposed to. It's just that maybe I haven't thought enough when we built on its area on how to protect it and think about it and have proper fences or repellent or put technology. It's where are we putting our technology? Instead of putting it into things that would protect the population, we're not unified. Because if we were unified, maybe people would say, they'd ask questions. Like what I admire about you so much is you ask questions. So like, what are the animal species that live in this area before we build this town? You know?
Good question. Great question.
Like, what are they? What are their patterns? Where do they move? And then people would have more jobs. They'd be like, oh, we need to hire some scientists. And so it's just like a different kind of thinking process that could happen if there was the unity.
Yeah.
But this started from asking what my thing. What do you think though? What do you think about the human being, if any of them are bad inherently?
I don't think anyone's evil. I think people are deceivingly, like if you were to interview a bunch of serial killers, it's like it's really hard to get through to that light. But
Exactly.
I'm sort of in the camp where I'm determined to withstand the darkness, to pierce through to that light, um, which sometimes to my own expense, which that's a whole nother journey of not being strong enough and build up the stamina enough to fend off and bring light to those dark places without damaging yourself to where you can't be helpful anymore. That's a fine line that I'm sure like people like psychologists and all kinds of teachers of any kind have to cultivate, like having that. A question that popped up in terms of I'm in agreement with you about the Hitler statement that I'm underneath it all. Hitler is an unhappy person that had choice after choice led to a different scenario where their light was veiled.
Right.
And it's just funny, like thinking back a few years ago on my journey, or maybe someone else who might listen to this to think like having compassion for Hitler almost might seem crazy. It's like, how could you have, like, there's just, I can sense just like if someone else were to hear this combo thinking like, I'm not connecting those dots yet. Like compassion for that person, I'm not sure I follow, which I'm following. But there's definitely points in my life where if you're in that reactionary state, you want sort of to continue like the eye for the eye mentality of like, oh, this person did something bad, so they deserve XYZ punishment.
Right.
And I don't know. That's actually, I do know. In my opinion, I we have the opportunity in every moment to end that karmic cycle of that animalistic nature, to not
Mm-hmm.
want to be the person that throws the first stone at Hitler, who actually says, you know what, like that's actually what maybe you're doing, but I'm choosing not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, and it requires, I think, a certain degree of um, dealing with our own resentments and wrongs that we've experienced in life, and then that causes us to be even more angry at other injustice, which isn't bad. But I think that in the case of someone like him, you also have the side of where um, society has to uphold reward and punishment, but not individuals. So if like a person like Hitler, or I've heard Stalin, or like you said, serial killers, we don't hate them, but we could sure isolate them somewhere, like a prison or something, so that they're not going to hurt all of us, you know? But then do you, like, on top of that, like feed them unhealthy food out of spite and punishment and this and that? No, you know? Like, so it's like this moderation of like the society has to have punishment and it's unjust for the sake of compassion to not protect society from unsafe individuals. But it's just knowing that in the end, the only one that can in the end judge that unsafe individual is God. We might have an idea, and maybe it's a good idea about how he might decide about somebody, but still, we're not the ones that make that judgment. And that's how I personally understand it, is that only he can. And we should never see ourselves, and I think it's very difficult, probably in truth, but we should never see ourselves as superior to anyone. And I think that's difficult, but I think it's very important for like a healthy society. But it's like, if you have a world that's just trying not to like kill, destroy, self-destruct, and have war, then those higher degrees of evolution of the mind, of being able to see all people as not see yourself, even if there's a thief, you don't see yourself as better. You just see, okay, that person is ignorant right now, they're sick for some reason, and there's certain ways you respond to that, probably through education. It might be they have some sort of punishment from society, but not for the purpose of harming, but for the purpose of protecting society and helping that individual to advance. There might be some things where a person, in some cases, the person is so far gone, but they're still not in their true creation evil, but they might be so far gone that there might not be anything anyone in this world could do for them. And I think there are cases like that, but they're still not created that way when they're born.
Yeah, I'm going off faith for that one for sure. It's a very, very cool, interesting topic. Um, words for me, it's fascinating to me how powerful words are to humans. Like we kind of get hooked into words, into agreeing with the concepts of words. And even things like swearing. My relationship with things like swearing has evolved, or I don't swear very often at all. And, the certain select few words. But I'm prefacing this because I was writing in my journal a week or two ago, maybe like 3 weeks ago now. And the phrase, karma is a bitch.
Yeah.
So I was writing, you are karma. Karma is a bitch, comma. It's essentially, this is a mini teaching I had with myself to update this phrase in a few clearing of things. Karma is that if you are that. Karma is peaceful, comma, if you are peaceful.
Beautiful.
Not sure how it plans out. I haven't tested it, but
hey man, it resonates with me strongly. I would even go so far as to say that I believe that.
Right, because I feel like when we say the word karma, I feel like that phrase comes up a lot. The karma's a bitch. Like, oh, it says a negative connotation when I hear the word karma. And I almost want to update it because I think karma is neutral. And it's up for you to decide what it is through your actions and your energy. So it's like, if you really believe that, then that's probably what you are. And if you choose to be peaceful, then karma might respond peacefully. Dude, to dovetail back a little bit, you mentioned this is something I'm interested in, putting someone perhaps in isolation or imprisonment for the better of the whole, of sort of creating this justice of just boundaries, which can be very loving and appropriate at certain times. And it's sort of in present day terms, with all of the racial inequality really being exposed to more and more people, myself included, I'm blown away by how ignorant in a lot of ways I've been to the topic of race, where I've been privileged to not have directly just been educated on the matter, because it hasn't directly affected me in ways it has to others. And so for the last week or two, I've been really learning as much as I can about that. And it's interesting. I'm reading this book called The New Jim Crow, and it's essentially pointing at the evolution from slavery to now the mass incarceration. Oh, can you still hear me? Yeah, you're good. Hold up, it's about to go back on, I think. Nice.
The rain just started coming down, so I had to use the headphones, and
nice.
But now I can hear you clear.
Dude, rain sounds beautiful right now. No rain here. Yeah, so I just wanted to touch maybe as another sort of one of our final topics to touch on, if you'd be interested in speaking to this. Mass incarceration has been a fascinating topic to learn about.
Yeah.
and how that sort of relates to racial injustice. I watched this documentary called The 13th, about the 13th Amendment in
Yeah.
America, the abolishment of slavery, and if unless you're a criminal, and now with all these ways to enforce law and order through things like war on drugs, in my opinion, more of a health and community issue than a criminal issue for many cases. It's interesting to read about how we view it. It seems like we've largely created this imprisonment system that can easily make it legal to discriminate others, because once you've been to prison, you have all these rights stripped away from you for life. And I'm just being totally exposed to the tremendous injustice going on there, and it's just been totally a game changer for me to humbly read about this and see how I can do my part to talk about these things and expose these things that I believe are not the truest, most beautiful thing we can be doing right now. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's a topic you've gone in. Oh wait, I can't hear you yet.
The rain got louder. I've written down a couple of these things. I have unity. I think is a real topic to really look at. I'd love to look at deeply sometime on one of these calls. Mass incarceration, I think, is a really important topic, and I'd love to share a thought on it now. And I have so much to learn about it. I'm no expert.
Yeah, me too.
Racial prejudice and the oneness of humanity is another topic, and we touched on it today, but I'd love to go a little deeper. There's so many amazing spiritual things connected to that issue. For example, individual investigation of the truth. And like, that's also connected to justice. It's not just for a person to be told something and then just to not go at least within themselves or without into the world and explore to find the truth for themselves. So, and it's all connected to the oneness of humanity. Because if anyone really investigates it, they'll actually find that it's really a single human race. There's no real races. But that's another topic. And there's reasons for the apparent differences in people, but it's not, there's nothing significant. It's all just accidental and nothing at any significant level that's different. And then the concept about animals, the relationship between the different kingdoms, mineral, plant, animal, human, and spirit. And you know, are people greater than animals? And I think that is, I mean, personally, the answer is no, but are they different with different responsibilities and whatnot? And maybe higher up in the levels of kingdoms, perhaps, you know, in the same way that, but that's a whole nother topic, because like, I think the reason we're so sensitive to that topic is because we can see the glaring, utter disregard for animal life in the world that is so pervasive that it's just like when I was at Michigan State University, I was having tea. I loved tea. And I was like, I love this. Man, I'm putting like 4 tea bags in this cup. I love this stuff. Like I could just, if I could fit more than that, I would do it, you know? So I put like, it was loose leaf. So I just piled it, probably like half of the cup, boiled it, let it steep. I was like, I love tea. And I had about a quarter of that cup and I couldn't drink tea again for like, maybe a year, because it was such a terrible taste to me. So if you even brought a tea bag to me, I would be like this. So I think in the same way, we're so bombarded by the mistreatment of environment and animals that when someone even brings an idea that's somewhat suggesting that that's justified, it's repulsive. You know, for some people who are like more aware of the realities, it's repulsive. But I think there's differences between the kingdoms, but it's it's I don't think it's a conversation of like who's better and this and that. But anyway, I digress. Anyway, that's a whole topic that I'd love to get a deeper understanding of and think about more. Um, and then reciprocity and mutual aid is one. Consultation is one. Um, Music. Oh my gosh. So like music and the arts. And like you said, I want to be more concise. Like I want to think about more of what to share and what to think about and go over some. I love just rapping and chopping it up like this. Although I was been reflecting on the phrase chopping it up lately, and I was like, I think that refers to like chopping up some weed, like before you're gonna smoke. So I'm like, huh. And I don't smoke, and that's a whole nother conversation. But like, I'm like, should I like be using that in my? But that's something I say. Anyway, yeah, chopping it up, and you know, um, and what was the topic? So consultation.
Mention
Oh,
music last.
music,
And then
music and the arts,
yeah.
music, arts, music and the arts in general. But then there's also music and the arts for social impact, um, or social change. Like so, there's a different topics. Oh, food. Um,
Big one.
Food, what we eat, why. Consciousness, like the fact of like this, a theme that has kept coming up is you're talking about this evolution of consciousness and like what happens when you become more aware of reality and your sensitivity, like you're more connected to the fish, and honestly, like I am a big proponent, and this is nothing spiritual, this is just my lower not caring side. I'm a big proponent of heck, I live in this world, so I just go with the flow of the world. It is what it is now. When things are way better, we'll get to it. So like I have that side of me. So I'm like, yeah, I mean they're chopping fish, whatever. On the other hand, what does that say to children?
Bro, that's amazing you said that. If you don't mind me popping in real quick. Like, while I was watching that happen last night, just like this table design for like chopping up a fish that were alive, but then chop them up. There's just a group of kids just like looking on like in curiosity. And I was like, oh man, like, and then afterwards, one of the boys was like stabbing the fish because after it's dead and all chopped up. And I was just like, oh man, like that's all normal and desensitized to like that whole thing was just like a science fair experiment for all these kids to watch. And this is as I was playing a show, I looked over, I was just like, and it hit me. It really did. I was taken back by it, and I wasn't expecting to be taken back by it because in my evolution from eating meat all the time in my upbringing to going more vegetarian and then still eating fish and now eating vegan, like that was one of the first times I can really explicitly feel like, wow, like that makes me uncomfortable. And I hadn't felt that way before towards fish, one of the last quote unquote animal products I was eating.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say,
Yeah, that's serendipity right there.
mm-hmm.
From what our conversation into what you experienced.
It felt so like out of place from what I was expecting to see, like playing the show out in this beautiful backdrop area to these people and connecting and sharing these songs, and then looking over and like seeing the scene unfold next to me. I was like, that's normal.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, what if that was like a human being just like getting like, what are we doing? Like,
you'd have to stop the show.
I know. And that's what I literally thought about that. And I was like, I didn't know what I needed to do in that moment. Like, do I make, this is, the song I was singing was Don't Worry by Bob Marley. Like, don't worry, every little thing is going to be all right. And I was thinking in my head, should I like start making this into a joke? Like, not for that fish though. And like, see, to just get people aware of like, what are we doing?
Two things. I love the fact that you considered that, and I'm so happy that you chose not to do that.
I chose not to.
I think it comes back to, it's something in this tablet, which we can look, and another day we can talk about this thing, but I love this principle, man. Like it brings in my heart, like it's so beautiful, the awareness, but it brings in my heart, like it's not so much, some things it's what you do, but a lot of things, even maybe the majority of things, it's not so much what you do, but why you do it, you know? But there's certain things where the line is usually drawn, but like generally it's not so much what you do, but why you do it. Um, and um, this concept here that talks about when a person is let's see, yes, when a person is ignorant, they need education. If they're childlike or immature, they need training until they reach maturity. If they're sick, you know, for example, in Native American culture, to just probably, in some Native American culture I've heard of, to take a knife and just go start this whatever to a fish would be, from what I understood, like sacrilegious, because it's a sacred creature. When you take the fish's life, they say a prayer first. They know that they need it for the survival of the tribe, and they accept it as the gift from the nature spirit to their people. They're humble. They don't see themselves as greater than the fish. They see the fish as a part of the great something that's like the source of their life, you know, and as maybe a direct gift from their creator, and they're humble and they're grateful for it. And it is true, like another predator would also chomp on that fish itself. And so we wouldn't, the fact of a fish being food is not in and of itself evil. A human being food is in and of itself evil, period, as far as I understand. It's not appropriate, because there's so many, this faculty of meditation makes it just horrendous to us, and ununderstandable, and we can think about it in so many deep ways and lose our minds just from such a barbarous, cruel act. But, you know, a bear will chomp a salmon, and I'm not going to go in a campaign to stop bears from eating salmon, because it's like, it's okay. It's part of the system. So the act of a fish suffering such a fate, I think, is okay. However, by a human being and in a disrespectful manner, and then on top of it, that fish stand is connected to a dysfunctional system that's probably depleting the ocean that you might have even been near. And so the whole thing is just entirely sometimes disrespectful, harmful, and completely lacks any kind of like awareness of reality, you know. And so when I see that, it makes me think of what he's saying here is there needs to be training. The sick ones, they need to be cured. So maybe you could say there's the sickness of unawareness. It needs to be cured, but how do you cure that? How do you make someone aware? How could they? I mean, I have so much to learn about these things. Sincerely, I say that, you know, like, how does one become aware? There must be no hatred and enmity. And so I think people are pretty forgiving, you know, if you were to do that. But I'm just thinking, I'm sure that in your own reflection, there's ways of reaching them, because people, and also you don't know who the mature ones are in the audience, you know? So like who the audience is would really determine like what could be done for in that situation. And I think, this is my personal understanding at the moment, it's not like the stance of like the Baha'i teachings or anything, but like just thinking about it, like you don't know who the mature ones are there and what the chain reaction is. So like if the goal is to make people aware about, you know, having a more respect and sacredness for living beings and not messing up the minds of children, you know, how does one go about that? Sorry, I really just rambled. I even to the point of feeling bad about it. But hey, we're learning. So
Dude, I hear you. Yeah, that was an interesting thing I'll have to reflect on. I chose to keep my vibe high and not specifically act or make a joke out of it to bring. I wasn't quite sure other than to just stay my course and finish the show.
mhm.
But yeah, one thing I did use as a perspective builder is when you talk about maturity of the audience. Sometimes I think, or sometimes I choose to see everyone in the audience through the eyes of me being a kid and them being a kid too,
Oh,
kid to
cool.
kid, and that sort of creative simplicity, no judgments, just playful, and um, I think that's where, since I was indwelling in
Sounds
some of that
nice.
energy, yeah, that's maybe why I wanted to make a joke out of it. But then I realized it
Mm,
was sort of making this divisive thing of like, we're over here doing this beautiful thing and they over here, and I'm sort of judging it, saying this is, I'm making an example out of them with my platform. And I was like, oh man, like I'm not going to say anything.
yeah.
Um,
I wouldn't, I feel that you would, if something was really touching my heart and like I really felt like something needed to be done, and if you're in the same situation it was happening, I'd probably give you a higher chance of making a wise decision than I would. Because like if I see like you sometimes you see injustice or something wrong that's really affecting you, and then sometimes like we can err on the side of taking hasty action as opposed to careful, wise, and effective um, action. It's not to judge action, but yeah. So I think that kudos to you for thinking on that level uh, in the situation.
a quote that's come up a lot in this convo for me, it's popped up like 4 times now.
Mm.
I don't know who said it, but it's the quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And that seems to be like a thread or a theme that runs throughout a lot of the things that we've mentioned today, um, in regards to the different kingdoms, different responsibilities at different roles, different positions, different responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's definitely something I'm thinking about a lot.
I'm writing some of these things. Oh shoot, I wrote them in the wrong place. I'm writing some of these things down.
I feel like that's a quote from Spider-Man or something. Maybe it's
I
not
love it.
actually from Spider-Man the movie, but it like was said in the movie and was popularized through it or something like that.
Right.
Man, I haven't seen
Food.
that in a while. Spider-Man.
That was a good movie, man. The first one.
Mhm.
But see, that's the thing. Like, this is where I say, like, I have to. It's moderation. I'm so grateful for the principle of moderation because I feel like it allows me to be loving to my journey. So I can watch Spider-Man. You know, like I don't have to. I'm so grateful because in the faith, it teaches moderation and progress. So it's like moderation. Like I can watch Spider-Man. I don't have to all of a sudden because I live in an environment. So I don't have to all of a sudden cut off my environment like a monk, because it's the only way you can be perfectly fair and just in the world we live in is to take yourself out of it, you know?
Right, and then how is that helpful? Because then, you know,
Exactly.
everyone has to go to the finish line.
And so then it couldn't even be just then because you shouldn't have taken yourself out of it. You should have been helpful.
Ah, right, right. And then
I like
I'd love to
that.
hear a monk's perspective right now. If there was a third person on the call, they'd be like, yeah, that'd be interesting too. I'm with you though. Like, there's something about, I've described this to some other
True.
people. Like, I imagine myself climbing a mountain metaphorically, and one of my favorite things is to be able to wave at somebody else, like climbing up the mountain too, and just to be like, "Hey, I see you," and I'm like taking care of my boots and my where my hands are going, and like I see you doing that, and like I can't do it for you, and you can't do it for me, but like just that acknowledgement of like, "Hey, we're both climbing the same thing." I love that moment. There's that awareness of like, hey, I'm not gonna go over there and like lift you up completely unless you absolutely need it, but like,
Yeah. Right.
or if you're about to die. But I love that moment of like, hey, like we're overcoming our suffering and we're learning about unity and we're climbing this metaphorical mountain, this progress, this. And I just love that moment of
I
connection
love
of like
that.
we acknowledge that, and that's, I think, really exemplified in our conversations. We're both on our individual journeys and we're connecting in the middle through beautiful conversation. And like that's all there is, and we're connecting on it, and it's beautiful.
Hmm.
It's so
I
good.
really like that. I really like that imagery. The mountain is like huge. Really, I love that imagery. And then also, it makes me think when you walk down the street. I used to think of this in high school. It was so weird, and also just in the city you live in, like when you walk on certain streets and like you see people, and somehow, like if you were to see that person in the next town, not in your town where you see them, but if you see them in the next town, you'd be like, oh, hello, if you interact, like, oh, hey, yes, I used to see you walking down by the coffee shop on such and such street. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's like this big connection. So it's like, it's like, it's like there is this connection even in the silence, even without acknowledging it. Like there's a guy doing yard work down the street right there. I don't know if I've ever talked to him, but we're connected because, he lives on the same street. He sees me out here. I see him out here. There's a connection.
That's deep. That's deep. Yeah, bro. That reminds me of Simon Sinek has talked about something like sort of similar with that. And maybe we can
Mm.
find some closing thoughts here soon. I know we're just
Yeah, man.
flowing so great, but
Flowing,
that
flowing.
reminds me of Simon. He talked about how like if you're two people are from LA, and then it's just funny how like if you go to Europe and you meet two people there that are from the States, they're like, "Oh, you're from the States? Wow!" And then if you just like keep zooming out, if you saw another human anywhere, like you described it really well in the way the mini story that you shared. It's just funny how that works. Like imagine that level of connection if we all realized that in terms of the galaxy we're living in. It's like, wow, like
Yeah.
you're from 2 inches
What?
away. What's up?
Right. It's like, man, you're in this galaxy. There's so many billions of there's billions, right? Billions of galaxies, and you're from this one. Oh man, so good to meet you.
I guess we could break it down, neighborhoods. Like, oh, you're from this neighborhood? I'm from this neighborhood. Word. That's usually not the approach. Um, Bouncing back to my intention for today about silence. Over the last week of not being on social media, I watched, of many things, one thing was Fred Rogers' documentary. And I haven't watched him much. Like growing up, I'm not sure if you're familiar with his whole journey or work. Really fascinating guy. He sort of pioneered children's television. What time period would this be? I'd be guessing.
Oh, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah. I watched his documentary, and growing up, I didn't watch him for whatever reason. My parents didn't vibe with him, and right, that's another interesting thing. But nonetheless, I watched his documentary, and he was, at one point said how in this busy world, we often may forget to give the gift of silence to others. he has so many wonderful sayings and teachings just by like the life that he lived. From what little snippet I saw of it from like a documentary, just a beautiful person, and that sort of stuck with me the last several days of really being consciously aware of this silence of where I'm speaking from and in conversation, and with that comes this peace for sure. So are there any other like words or topics you'd want to touch on before maybe wrapping up this convo for today?
Man, I would love to go back to these different topics sometime if you're up for it, and like really like I also love to have these just going with the flow conversation, because I feel like it opens so many cool windows that we look out and we're like, oh, look at that world, and then we're like, oh, look at that world, and I think it opens them like I wouldn't have thought about some of these today, like food and what we eat and why. I wouldn't have thought about sense of collectiveness, you know, and the sense of connection we have with others that we don't even know. I wouldn't have thought about that, and I'd love to explore, like, if you'd like to, like like a format of where we just hopefully we can do more just like this, and also it would be really cool to do one where we just like look at one of these things and like just kind of dive into it, kind of a thing. I don't know how that exactly works, but
well, I just got chills, so I think it'll work. And
okay.
like, I think it would be awesome to like have, maybe we could coordinate or plan a short little series.
Oh, I would love that.
Like, I don't know, a 30, 45 minute or however long, a short, like
Whoa.
a very specific, like
Whoa,
a consultation conversation for boom. And then have 7 of them on each of the topics that you mentioned, which I'd love to give them each time, and you could prepare for them individually. Whoa. And have like kind of a general framework of quotes or things you want to talk about. That'd be cool.
Whoa, you just hit me with something there. This idea of a series, man.
I think that'd be great.
That is really interesting.
And then it could all be shorter, because like right now, I don't know exactly how long we've been, probably a few hours.
Yeah.
And we could have them be more condensed if it's like a specific topic for give or take 30 minutes or whatever it is.
Right. And I really I think it's cool, and it helps me think about it, because like the one, we're just chilling, which I really like, because it's like free and open. It's like, they call it here breezing out, you know.
That's cool.
And you explore, you know, it's like we're breezing out and you're open to the inspiration. Whereas the other kind, you're a little more closed and you more focused, you know, like a laser is very useful, but it's not going to light up a whole room. But it is very useful about a specific thing. And I feel like that's kind of the difference. And I like both. But this idea that you just said about a series is very interesting to me. I feel like there's more to it. I don't know what it is, but my excitement, but I'll just pause on my excitement and allow. Okay, cool. That, for some reason, that really struck a chord when you said that.
We'll crush it, man. We'll crush it. I mean, if we can handle open-ended combos of just going with the flow, then having a specific, I think, target that's really like keeping it super focused, will I think inevitably bring up some great quality and deliver like a potent little message in a like, oh, this video is about the topic of consultation, and we're gonna like dive into that from a few different angles instead of like bouncing off into the different kingdoms or like whatever, like, you know.
But that's awesome. That's good too, right?
Yeah, and
yeah.
I love them both, like you said.
Yeah,
it's cool. Nice. Let's do it. Let's
man.
Brainstorm on it.
So interesting. I'm just something about what you just said kind of. This sounds crazy. It probably is crazy. I don't know. Maybe I should just hold my thoughts, let them simmer, and reflect a little bit, and then share, because it's in a burst of excitement, like different ideas of just like,
I'll think on it. Maybe there could be a music component too.
that would be really cool.
Like a song, just a mini service. It's a mini worship podcast music combo. There you go. On a certain topic.
Yeah. That's cool, man. That is really cool.
Well, bro, what do you think? Any last parting bits for today? Think on it. I'm excited to think on it. I think that would be great to circle back on.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if I should like just brainstorm, share my thoughts, or if I should like reflect deeply on what you just said and like then share thoughts.
Whatever you think.
But what you just said about circling back on it maybe kind of makes me think, oh yeah, let's circle back on it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do it.
That'd be great.
I could share a song I did if you feel up to it. Because we've been, my uncle says the limit is an hour and a half for Zoom. After an hour and a half, you're drained, he says. Like, that's his view. But he says in his experience, after an hour and a half, everything else is like, it requires a lot more because of like the platform and the format and everything and whatnot.
Yeah.
So maybe I could share, there's a song it's the recording quality is low, but the energy and the feeling of it I think is really nice. I was gonna say maybe share it on screen share, but I think maybe it would be better another time when we're more fresh, and could like share it at that time.
Dude, I'd love to do that and plan for that. I think that feels right. As much as I would love to, it would just be even more rich, I think, because I am starting to feel that too. Like,
Yeah.
We've been flowing for a while.
Yeah, man.
Great.
Indeed.
Well, bro, big hug, and we'll
yeah, man.
Back.
Big hug. Appreciate it, man.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to let us all settle. Like, man, after being off social media for a week and like diving back into this combo, it's like, I'm excited to just parse it out, learn, and circle back and plan for these things. The series I think will stick. I loved it.
Yeah, man, that resonated with me, man. That resonated with me.
So think on it and have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, man, you too.
147. Nice. We're flowing. Nice.
Flowing. What is it gonna say? It's gonna say a thing. Oh, what's 45 times 3? Why am I so slow right now?
90 times plus 35, 45, 135.
45 times 3 is 135.
Right, 45. Yeah, my brain is getting a little slower.
161, 90 something. Anyways, I was just thinking about it. Yeah, so I was just thinking like what we did now is almost 3 45-minute sessions.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I can almost break this combo into thirds and it'd be like 3 different podcasts.
Yeah, man. So, I was just going to say though, before we go, I'm going to send you the link of the song. I really would love to hear what you think about the rap song. And, no, you don't have, if you're like, oh, it's good, but it was edgy, because it is kind of edgy. It says some things in there that are like, but, I tried to make it like loving and uplifting, but yeah.
Cool. Bro, send it. I can't wait to check it out.
Awesome, man.
Dude, well, we'll talk in a bit. As always, it's lovely to chat.
Yeah, man, always appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity, man. Really enjoy these opportunities and conversations. It's the vibes.
All right, bro. We'll talk to you in a
All
little
right,
bit.
man. Peace.
Peace.